Geographic coordinates: 57 degrees 00 N, 25 degrees 00 E, 57.000 degrees north, 25.000 degrees east, 57.000, 25.000. Latvia lies on the eastern shores of the Baltic Sea on the level northwestern part of the rising East European platform between Estonia and Lithuania. About 98% of the country lies under 200 meters elevation. With the exception of the coastal plains, the Ice Age divided Latvia into three main regions: the Morainic western and eastern uplands and the middle lowlands. Latvia holds over 12,000 rivers, only 17 of which are longer than 100 kilometers, and over 3,000 small lakes, most of which are eutrophic. The major rivers include the Daugava, the Lilup, the Gojar, the Venta and the Salakar. Woodlands, more than half of which are pine woods, cover around 41% of the country. Other than peat, dolomite, and limestone, natural resources are scarce. Latvia has 531 kilometers of sandy coastline, and the ports of Liepāja and Ventspils provide important warm water harbors for the Baltic coast. Area of Latvia is larger than the area of many European countries. Its strategic location has instigated many wars between rival powers on its territory. As recently as 1944, the USSR granted Russia the Adbar region, which Latvia contested after the dissolution of the Soviet Union. Physical environment: Latvia encompasses 64,589 square kilometers and is an extension of the East European plain. Its flat terrain differs little from that of its surrounding neighbors. Latvia's only distinct border is the Baltic Sea coast, which extends for 531 kilometers. Its neighbors include Lithuania on the south, Estonia on the north, Russia on the east, and Belarus on the southeast. Prior to World War II, Latvia bordered eastern Poland, but as a result of boundary changes by the Soviet Union, this territory was attached to Belarus. Also, in 1944 Russia annexed the northeastern border district of Latvia, known as Adbar, including the town of Pytalovo. Geographic features: the physiography of Latvia and its neighboring areas was formed, to a large degree, during the Quaternary period and the Pleistocene Ice Age, when soil and debris were pushed by glaciers into mounds and hills. Undulating plains cover 75% of Latvia's territory and provide the main areas for farming. 25% of the territory lies in uplands of moderate-sized hills. About 27% of the total territory is cultivable, with the central Zemgale plain south of Riga being the most fertile and profitable. The three main upland areas, in the provinces of Kurzeme, Vidzeme, and Latgale, provide a picturesque pattern of fields interspersed with forests and numerous lakes and rivers. In this area, the extensive glacial moraines, eskers, and drumlins have limited the profitability of agriculture by fragmenting fields and presenting serious erosion problems. About 10% of Latvian territory consists of peat bogs, swamps, and marshes, some of which are covered by stunted forest growth. Forests are the outstanding feature of Latvia, claiming 42% of the territory. Timber and wood products are among the country's most important exports. Two-thirds of the forests consist of Scots pine or Norway spruce. Latvian forests differ from those of North America primarily because of their relatively brush-free understory. The forest floor, however, is far from a biological desert, as is often the case in tree plantations. Indeed, one of the most widespread pastimes of the population is picking bilberries, cranberries, mushrooms, and other bounties of the natural environment. Few of the forests are fully mature because of previous overcutting and also because of several violent storms during the 1960s, which snapped or uprooted millions of trees. As a consequence, most of the wood today is derived from thinning and improvement cuts, forming 50% of the annual total growth increment of 8 million cubic meters of wood. For a long time, wood has been a basic source of energy. Local wood is also an important resource for the pulp and paper industry and for specialized plywood and furniture manufacturers. A great concern today is the unregulated cutting of timber for the foreign market. Prices paid by European wood buyers are phenomenally high by local standards, and there is much pressure to utilize this opportunity for cash accumulation, even without legal permits. By 1992, the problem had become so serious that Latvian forestry officials were given the right to carry firearms. Not all forests are productive. Many areas, especially abandoned, formerly private farms, have become overgrown with low-value alders and other scrub trees. With the return of private farming, these areas are once again being reclaimed for agriculture. In the process, however, there is a danger that these areas, which are ideal for wildlife, will become threatened. The decades-long neglect of extensive areas of marginal farmland was a boon for the establishment of unique ecological conditions favorable for the survival of animal species rarely found in other parts of Europe. According to a World Wildlife Fund study in 1992, Latvia has unusual populations of black storks, lesser spotted eagles, otters, beaver, lynx, and wolves. There are also great concentrations of deer, wild boar, elk, and red fox. Many Latvians today are planning to exploit this resource by catering to foreign hunters. The variegated and rapidly changing physiography of glacial moraines and lowlands has also allowed temperate flora, such as oaks, to grow within a few hundred meters of northern flora, such as bog cotton and cloudberries. This variety and the rapid change in natural ecosystems are among the unique features of the Republic. The Soviet system left behind another windfall for naturalists. The Latvian western seacoast was a carefully guarded border region. Almost all houses near the sea were razed or evacuated. As a result, about 300 kilometers of undeveloped seashore are graced only by forests of pine and spruce and ecologically unique sand dunes. The temptation for fast profit, however, may foster violation of laws that clearly forbid any construction within 1 kilometer of the sea. This could lead to one of the last remaining wild shorelines in Europe becoming non-existent. The seashore adjoining the population centers around Riga was a major focus of tourism during the Soviet era. Jurmala, with its many sanatoriums and tourist accommodations, its tall pines, sandy beaches, and antique architecture, is now experiencing a wrenching readjustment. East European tourists can no longer afford to come here, and Western tourists have not yet discovered the area and its relatively low prices. West Europeans may be loath to come, however, because excessive pollution has closed Jurmala beaches to swimming since 1988. Moreover, facilities and accommodations adequate for Soviet tastes fall far short of minimal standards expected in the West. Latvia has an abundant network of rivers, contributing to the visual beauty and the economy of the country. The largest river is the Adbar, which has been an important route for several thousand years. It has been used by local tribes as well as by Vikings, Russians, and other Europeans for trade, war, and conquest. With a total length of 1,020 kilometers, the Adbar originates in the Valdai Hills in Russia's Tver Oblast, meanders through northern Belarus, and then winds through Latvia for 370 kilometers before emptying into the Gulf of Riga. It is about 200 meters wide when it enters Latvia, increasing to between 650 and 750 meters at Riga and to 1.5 kilometers at its mouth. The river carries an average annual flow of 21 cubic kilometers. Its total descent within Latvia of 98 meters has made it an attractive source of hydroelectric power production. The first hydroelectric station, Igums hydropower plant, was built during Latvia's independence period. The second dam, Plavanash hydropower plant, aroused an unusual wave of protest in 1958. Most Latvians oppose the flooding of historical sites and a particularly scenic gorge with rare plants and natural features, such as the Stabarags, a cliff comparable in cultural significance to the Lorelei in Germany. The construction of the dam was endorsed in 1959, however, after the purge of relatively liberal and nationally oriented leaders under Eduard Spurkliffs and their replacement by Moscow-oriented, ideologically conservative cadres led by Arvids Pelcer. The third dam, Riga hydroelectric power plant, just above Riga, did not provoke much protests because of the seeming hopelessness of the cause. The proposed fourth dam, at the town of Daugavpils on the Daugava River, became the rallying point for protest in 1986–87 by hundreds of thousands of Latvians. This dam was not constructed, in spite of the vast expenditures already poured into the project. Smaller rivers include the Li Loop, in central Latvia, with an average annual flow of 3.6 cubic kilometers, the Venta, in the west, with 2.9 cubic kilometers, the Goja, in the northeast, with 2.5 cubic kilometers, and the Iviekst, in the east, with 2.1 cubic kilometers. Very little hydroelectric power is generated by their waters, although planners are now thinking of reactivating some of the abandoned older dams and turbines. The Goja is one of Latvia's most attractive, relatively clean rivers and has an adjoining large Goja National Park along both of its banks as one of its notable features. Its cold waters attract trout and salmon, and its sandstone cliff and forest setting are increasingly a magnet for tourists interested in the environment. More than 60% of the annual water volume of Latvia's six largest rivers comes from neighboring countries, mainly from Belarus and Lithuania. These adjoining resources create obvious needs for cooperation, especially in pollution control. The dangers from a lack of cooperation were brought home to Latvians in November 1990, when a polymer complex in Novopolsk, Belarus, accidentally spilled 128 tons of cyanide derivatives into the Daugava River with no warning to downstream users in Latvia. Only the presence of numerous dead fish alerted Latvian inhabitants to the danger. Climate. In the summer, daylight hours are long and in the winter short. In December it is still pitch dark at 9 a.m., and daylight disappears before 4 p.m. The climate is tempered by the Gulf Stream flowing across the Atlantic Ocean from Mexico. Average temperatures in winter are reasonably mild, ranging in January from -2.8 degrees Celsius in Liepāja on the western coast, to -6.6 degrees Celsius in the southeastern town of Daugavpils. July temperatures range from 16.7 degrees Celsius in Liepāja to 17.6 degrees Celsius in Daugavpils. Latvia's proximity to the sea brings high levels of humidity and precipitation, with average annual precipitation of 633 mm in Riga. There, an average of 180 days per year have precipitation, 44 days have fog, and only 72 days are sunny. Continuous snow cover lasts 82 days, and the frost-free period lasts 177 days. This precipitation has helped provide the abundant water for Latvia's many rivers and lakes, but it has created many problems as well. A large part of agricultural land requires drainage. Much money has been spent for land amelioration projects involving the installation of drainage pipes, the straightening and deepening of natural streams, the digging of drainage ditches, and the construction of polder dams. During the 1960s and 1970s, drainage work absorbed about one-third of all agricultural investments in Latvia, although accounting for only one-third of 1% of the territory. Latvia was responsible for 11% of all artificially drained land in the former Soviet Union. An additional problem associated with precipitation is the difficulty of early mechanized sowing and harvesting because of waterlogged fields. Heavy precipitation occurs, especially during harvest time in August and September, requiring heavy investment outlays in grain drying structures and ventilation systems. In 1992, Latvia experienced the driest summer in recorded weather history, but unusually heavy rains in the preceding spring kept crop damage below the extent expected. The moist climate has been a major factor orienting Latvian agriculture toward animal husbandry and dairying. Even most of the field crops, such as barley, oats, and potatoes, are grown for animal feed. Area and boundaries. Area. Total. 64,589 square kilometers land. 62,249 square kilometers water. 2,340 square kilometers area. Comparative. Slightly larger than West Virginia, slightly smaller than New Brunswick. Land boundaries. Total. 1,382 kilometers. Border countries. Belarus 171 kilometers, Estonia 343 kilometers, Lithuania 576 kilometers, Russia 292 kilometers. Coastline 498 kilometers. Maritime claims. Territorial sea 12 nmi. Exclusive economic zone 200 nmi. Continental shelf 200 meters depth or to the depth of exploitation. Elevation extremes. Lowest point. Baltic Sea 0 meters. Highest point. Gazing Cans 312 meters. Latitude and longitude. North, south, west, east. Environmental concerns. Natural hazards. None. Environment. Current issues. Latvia's environment has benefited from a shift to service industries after the country regained independence. The main environmental priorities are improvement of drinking water quality and sewage system, household and hazardous waste management, as well as reduction of air pollution. In 2001, Latvia closed the EU accession negotiation chapter on environment, committing to full enforcement of EU environmental directives by 2010. Environment. International agreements. Party 2. Air pollution, persistent organic pollutants, biodiversity, climate change, Kyoto Protocol, endangered species, hazardous wastes, law of the sea, ozone layer protection, ship pollution, wetlands. Signed, but not ratified.